Okay, so here we go, starting off with 2.5, section 2.5, identifiers. And this section really just has to do with how we're going to name our variables and later on functions and other things. But we're looking at how we choose to name things as the programmer. So remember, you're working on programs with other people. It could be something that takes a long time, that it goes across a lot of different files, has thousands of lines of code, those kinds of things. So naming conventions are really important. Names should definitely indicate the use of the identifier, and we'll look at some examples in the next couple slides so you can kind of see that. You can't use reserved words. So every coding language has reserved words or keywords, depending on which terminology you like to use. And let me just show you really quickly. I copied this out of our book, and so these are keywords in C++. So some of the ones you've seen so far, you've seen namespace. Let's see, what else we've seen. Int. So, and we'll see a lot more. In just a couple of videos, you'll see double. So there's different ones that you'll see along the way. So anyway, what that means to you by not being able to use these reserved words means they're reserved for only certain things. So they can only be used for like an if statement. So that's what we have reserved for an if. Okay, so you can only use that for an if statement. You can't have a variable named if. I can't say int if equals 5. The if cannot be my variable name. It will not let you do that. All right, so this is just a quick look at some of the reserved words. It's not like you need to name them or I'm sorry, memorize them or anything, but this just gives you kind of an idea. Uh, so the way you would start your variable names when you're coming up with them is you're going to start with a letter, so alphabetic character or underscore. So the only two ways that you can start with a variable name. You cannot start with a number, right? So and after the underscore, you can throw in numbers. You can have more underscores. You can have additional letters. Okay, so it has to start with an alphabetic character or an underscore. And your alphabetic characters can be upper or lowercase. We talked about that in another video. And a capital N M for main is not the same thing as a lowercase m, so you have to be really careful of that. All right, so let's take a look at this really quickly. So we have, again, talking about name should reflect its purpose. And descriptive variable names, typically you'll have multiple words, and you can see some examples of them here. There's really two kind of conventions with this. You have underscore, so let's look at this first along the way. So you'll see everything lowercase so we have lowercase for all this except for in between the words are underscores. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. I put a little thing on here. Don't use this method. So everything that you will see in this particular book will use this naming convention. So where you have descriptive words, no, you can't have a space in between. You can't have a period in between, or a question mark, or a number sign, or any of that kind of stuff, right? So you can't use any of that stuff. Has to be a letter, a number, or underscore. But what we're going to do is we're going to take the words and you're going to go lowercase, except for starting with lowercase, you notice, and then the first letter of the next word will be capitalized. So same thing with quantity on order. So descriptive and uses this piece in here. So makes it a little bit easier to read when we capitalize the second letter. And this is the naming convention that we will use. So please use this for all of the assignments that you're doing. And you'll see the book does the same thing. So it'll make it a little bit easier for you to kind of follow along with the examples and that kind of stuff. And if you're using the same naming conventions, if you start with, like a skeleton file or something with something that the authors provided, you'll be rolling right along. So anyway, so we have that. And you have to remember too, don't forget, and you'll do this. Trust me, you'll do this. I still do this. You'll be rolling along. You'll have defined something as total sales, like this with the capital S, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, wait a second. When you're typing somewhere, you get an error, something doesn't come back right, and then you go, oh, I accidentally forgot to capitalize this S. So that's a big deal. So you have to be really, really careful. They'll be surprised. It's going to happen to you where you'll have this in your code and this in your code, and you'll have to figure out like what's going on. Then you go, oh man, I forgot. So anyway, it's going to happen. Okay, so let's look at a few examples just really quickly. Total sales we just looked at, right? So valid, we're good with that one. This one too, but please don't use that. Stay with this style, okay? Total dot sales, you can't have the period in there. Fourth quarter sales, can't have the number starting us out, right? So what you can do with this instead is maybe you say sales fourth quarter, and that's your variable name. So you could do something like that. And then let's see, looking at this one, total sales can't have this dollar sign in there. So that's obviously not going to work. Okay, so and you'll see as we're doing our naming along the way, you'll kind of get the hang of it, and it won't take you that long, and you'll be rolling right along with this.